Uh, so hopefully everybody can see the slide here with my I'd like to say lovely face, or at least my mum would say that on it. My name is Alice McDougall, and I'm an industry analyst here at Verdantix. I sit in our energy practice and work out of our London office. In this role, I conduct research on energy management software as well as industrial technologies. My previous experience includes working as an energy and sustainability engineer at Peter Bread Associates, a development and infrastructure consultancy firm in the UK. And I hold a master's in energy and environmental engineering from the University of Cambridge, as well as a Bachelor of Engineering also from the University of Cambridge. So first of all, just an interesting thought for us to think about today as we go through the webinar. If data is the foundation of all analytics, then big energy data is the foundation of all energy decisions. But more importantly, what happens if your data goes bad? What happens to those energy decisions? So a few interesting questions here. I'm sure you've heard them all around the office. It wasn't me, it was them. I am only human after all. I will get that to you as soon as I can. I don't have time, so let's just skip that stage. I don't understand this bit, never mind, I doubt it's important. I can give you some of the data you're asking for. These are all common phrases and comments we hear in everyday life, and what I'm going to do is look to put those into the perspective of utility bill data and how that can make energy data go bad. So the first one here would be, it's important to not assume that 100% of data coming from your utility provider is correct. And that's very important because it means no matter how good your collection and analysis is on your side, that errors for an incorrect billing will reduce the accuracy of all analysis based on that data. And an energy services firm I was speaking with, who have been providing bureau services for a number of years, have claimed that they achieve on average 3.5% for their clients simply by querying and checking the bills as they come in from their utility provider. The second one, I'm only human after all. So many organizations still rely on entering utility bill data manually. Why do they do so? Well, first of all, the data is very important, especially if you wish to manage energy as an expense or you want to have a closer track on your budgets, forecast your budgets. However, previously, the technology and the solutions were not out there for firms to easily and be able to automate this data capture process and take it straight from the utility bill into their systems. This meant they became reliant upon manual data entry. And there's two main issues we come across commonly when it comes to manual data entry. One is the fact that it's very time consuming, which means it's generally expensive. And the second one, which I feel is most important, is it's prone to errors. I know personally, and I'm sure a number of people listening in today would agree, you don't mind paying a premium for something if you get a premium product. You don't want an expensive product when it's also prone to errors. And a large technology firm that I was speaking to mentioned how they've gone from having 60 people getting data from 8 to 10 different people so that they could then go away and populate 10 different spreadsheets. That's the process they used to go through. And really, they were aware that errors can creep in, and most importantly, they were also aware that errors do creep in, and since then they've taken steps to automate this process to reduce those errors. I will get that data to you as soon as I can. So old data, this is where we have time lags with monthly billing cycles that then limit analysis. And what we're seeing is firms, as they become more inclined to having data as and when it's required, being able to do all sorts of level of analytics on almost every other function of the business. Is it really appropriate that you can only do analysis on your utility bill data sometimes up to 60 days after it has actually become sort of relevant. So what we're seeing is automation provides firms with access to data in near real time, and this enables organizations to run analysis as and when required. So as your boss asks you, what's happened here, or I need this forecast now, you can go into an accurate data set and conduct that analysis without having to put a caveat on it. Oh, by the way, we don't have the past 2 months worth of data. And again, a supporting point now from a food and beverage firm about how having access to invoice level data, and more importantly, being able to consolidate it or analyze it at any point, has been critical for their team, especially when you take into account what this gentleman referred to is that it's become critical because it wasn't a critical issue before. However, now they have it, they really do realize it. I don't have time, so let's skip that stage. This is the problem with partial data. So utility bills actually contain an awful lot of useful information, which, when analyzed appropriately, can identify cost and carbon emission reduction opportunities. But as a recurring theme of what I've already mentioned in my slides is that manually entering data is expensive, and people want to limit those costs. So this leads to much of the valuable data, including in bills, not being captured, and companies only entering the must-have data. And this results in missed opportunities. And when I was speaking to a high-tech engineering firm about what they actually do with their utility bill data, the gentleman was very open in responding to me. In fact, they haven't really thought about it. They haven't taken the time to look at their bills and extract whatever information they could do, because they just don't simply have time. They didn't even have a sense of the true value that that data could bring to their organization due to the time constraints. I don't understand this bit, but I doubt it's important. This commonly comes when we look at the domain expertise. So again, utility bills can be fairly complicated, and with a host of new sort of tariffs and billing structures coming into the market, this is only likely to increase when you look at things such as time of use pricing or putting greater emphasis on peak loads, for example. And data entry clerks that have traditionally been held responsible for entering this information, they do not have the domain expertise to compare and understand all the different bill types and look for not only errors, but also potential opportunities from assessing hundreds of different utility tariff rates and rate schedules. And this really puts into perspective when you take into account a very large firm which may have thousands of sites across a number of regions in North America, for example. Within those sites, they may be dealing with deregulated and regulated utilities. Within those utilities, they may even be on different tariffs for different sites. And I'm sure a lot of you, your eyes are probably spinning at the moment in terms of that. Just emphasizes the complexity of what can be the problem here. And one industrial firm I was speaking with, they went through the operation of, should we build an in-house team or should we look for some support in this? And they came to the conclusion that they simply didn't have the expertise in-house and fully put together that it would cost too much to train and maintain a team with the capabilities that could manage their diverse portfolio and all the different contracts that they had in place, but really place an emphasis on that maintain aspect, because the utility market is not one for sitting still, which means that to make sure you're harvesting all of the opportunity out there, you'd have to continuously train your members of staff that are looking for these errors or potential opportunities in the latest type of contractual agreements between yourself and your utilities. I can give you some of the data you're asking for. So again, this comes into a place of having data when it's required and looking at the scheduling of when you're receiving that data. And what we found is utilities rarely invoice on the first and last day of the month. And they rarely invoice, when you compare utility to utility, they rarely invoice on a similar period. So that means customers are left with data pretty much almost as and when they get it, and you just then have to deal with it. You'll have to pick up the pieces. And we see firms, as they look to do greater levels of analysis, they're looking for comparable periods, year-over-year frameworks. What was it in this period to the same period 2 years ago? And this requires utility data to be converted into financial periods or internal reporting periods so that you can have this standardized approach and really start to drive analysis of that data. And when you think about it, missing 1 day in a 30-day invoice period creates almost a 3% error. And if you're going to start forecasting and budgeting your energy consumption, your energy spend, using a baseline that is out by around 3%, it's not essentially the greatest start to putting forward a cast iron number to your CFO or your boss. And I think this last quote really demonstrates a lot of even why we're having this entire webinar today in terms of going forward. It is all about data quality for us. Without quality data, we'll continue to just stab around in the dark. And that came from a retail firm that previously, when they mentioned the dark, it would be around, we don't have any data. Whereas now they're seeing they have access to more data. However, if there's queries around the quality or the source or where that data is coming from, data without context or data without some form of validation is still leaving them stabbing around in the dark. So the next phase they're going on is trying to improve that quality of data that they're receiving. So we've run through a number of ways of how data errors can come through, or processes which may not be ideal for ensuring high data quality. But what actually happens when this data goes bad? Well, some of them are listed on this slide here, such as invoking confusion. So when someone is asked to give a budget or forecast out of a typical cycle, what do I do? How do I compare when the utility sent it to me to what I'm looking for my boss? Results in missed opportunities, so not having the correct people looking for the correct things and the correct opportunities will lead to your firm or your organization potentially missing out on opportunities that could have significant financial benefits to the organization. It can drive bad capital investment decisions. It can result in pushback on future capital investment requests, and it can erode trust in report accuracy. And those two are I think, real big bad problems for bad data, because energy management budgets, we've seen from our research, and I'm sure all of you feel the pain on the ground in terms of they're not exactly the easiest to come by. They're under threat from a number of different departments, all looking to secure as much budget as possible. And that means when you do get a bit of budget, you need to make sure that you're using it in the most appropriate way possible, and you're going to get a return on that was expected. And we've heard that being able to ensure and then validate that those savings have been achieved are essential for creating trust in an organization, and trust that the next time you go to your boss or your CFO and you put forward a business case, they're not going to look at it and go, well, what happened last time? They're going to look at it and look at it in a favorable light. So definitely in terms of the long-term future for your energy management strategies and budgets, ensuring all decisions are made on clean, good data is essential in our minds for building the business case and ensuring that budget maintains supported. So now we've talked about some of the causes of potentially bad data and what some of the risks are around that. What are people doing to try and overcome these issues? Well, when we asked 250 global energy directors how important is it for their firm to improve the following energy management processes in the next financial year, you can see from this chart here that 78% mentioned it was important that they improve their utility bill management processes, with 31% saying it was very important that they improve their internal utility bill management processes. That really shows this is an issue which people are revisiting now, to ensure they're doing it in the most timely and cost-effective manner, but ensuring high data accuracy as well. We see that firms are investing in cleaning up their energy data. So we asked a group of 15 buyers of energy management software how they rate the importance of the following energy management functionalities. And we can see here that across the board there was a fairly strong performance with, again, 80% of respondents mentioning it was important to have utility bill management as part of their energy management strategy, with 53% saying that that was very important to their organization. And we see that in line of firms looking to improve it because it's more important, this is being more and more required software capability. So again, we asked 15 buyers from billion-dollar plus firms when they're selecting energy management software, or when they have selected energy management software, to what extent do they require the following energy management software functionality? And we found 80% mentioned utility bill management as required, and we see that as a real sign to firms moving away from Excel spreadsheets and I need to talk to this person, and really automating it so that data comes from source straight into one system of record that is completely auditable, high data quality, and then everything else is based upon that. All budgeting, forecasting, analysis, and decisions are based from that one clean data source that is being managed and manipulated by an energy management software package or an internal information management system. So that brings me to the end of my section. So I'd just like to pass it back over to Eric now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alistair. So what have we learned from Alistair's presentation? First of all, we learned that big energy data is the foundation of all energy decisions. And of course, it follows that bad energy data can result in poor decisions. And finally, we learned that energy data collection and reporting is increasing in importance and quickly becoming an executive agenda item. Now I'm going to turn it over to our next panelist, Joe Amador from Johnson Controls. Joe, why don't you tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Thank you, Eric, and welcome, everyone. It's good to be with you this afternoon. I am a product manager at Johnson Controls, and I focus on energy management software. We have a variety of different types of software. As you can imagine, utility bill data is a core need for that software. I've been in the software space for about 5 years, and before that, spent a lot of time as a consultant, so I know very well what it's like to manage this type of data in spreadsheets, because I used to do that. So happy to be with you, and let's get into the presentation. The approach I wanted to take, following on to what Alistair covered, was really some specific individuals and specific types of activities that you can use utility bill data for. Many of these come from the different clients that I work with on a daily basis, and also things that our software is designed to do. So, a couple questions that you can think of. If you're investing in an efficiency project, how do you validate the savings? Do you have the data that you need to validate those savings? If you're setting targets for energy or emissions reduction, what is the basis of those? If you're spending time tracking utility data, if you have a manual process, how confident are you in that data? These are the types of questions that we hear all the time. Additionally, what type of story are you able to tell senior leaders, external bodies? My point is simply that utility bill data really can satisfy all of these needs, and having good data is obviously important. So when I look at the users, there's a variety of different types of users. There can be facility managers who are really looking at delivering the operating environment of the building to ensure that it's efficient, it's a productive space, but they're also concerned, of course, with what do we define as productive? How do we know how much energy we're really using? The finance department, the AP department, obviously they're paying bills. They need to know how much energy is being consumed, what is the cost of that energy, and anything they can do to get that data quicker and more accurately is obviously helpful. Energy managers, of course, making strategic decisions around how the energy is bought, how the energy is consumed, how that can be improved in the future. Utility bill data can act as a very good basis of a lot of those decisions. Sustainability managers, especially today on Earth Day, looking at carbon emissions, making decisions around which facilities might we want to invest in carbon reduction projects, initiatives. And then executive leaders, of course, having some visibility of how are we doing. If I set a target, if I make a public commitment to reduce our emissions, to reduce our energy consumption, where am I getting those estimates from? Where am I getting those targets from? So there's that. There's other features. If you're starting, if you have a lot of buildings and you're not quite sure where to focus your efforts, maybe you are interested, you have support from senior leadership to invest in efficiency projects, and you aren't sure where to start, having utility bill data is a good first pass. Being able to analyze that data quickly using our software, using other products, getting the data efficiently and quickly is obviously going to get you quicker to that point where you can make those decisions, you can benchmark your buildings, you can create better budgets. Additionally, measurement and verification of those projects. Anytime that you've invested in a large capital expense to reduce energy consumption, you're likely going to get months down the road questions from individuals. How much are we saving? How much energy, how much money are we getting? What is our return on that investment? And we can do that too using utility bill data alone. So very low touch way of doing things. And then, a variety of other energy analyses, even having a consistent, good source of utility bill data, we can use that data and look at, a variety of energy saving strategies, in many cases low cost or no cost, just by looking at that data, almost a remote audit type of approach. Again, the basis or the foundation of that is good utility data. So core, there's many different users and there's many different uses of this data. The goal is to make sure it's efficient, make sure it's accurate, it's collected efficiently, and it's accurate. So if we move to the next slide, we can see that, how are we getting this data? There's a variety of different ways. I speak to a lot of different individuals, building owners, building operators, facility managers, and there's a couple different flavors, and we can start at the top left. Paper bills, when you get your bills, it's almost a very kind of natural reaction. You have the bill, you can look at it, you can pay the bill, you can log that data in a spreadsheet perhaps, and over the course of months, of years, you may have a pretty good spreadsheet with data. The problem there, of course, is that it takes a lot of time to do that. The problem is also that you're probably not receiving your bill for at least 30 to 45 days till the actual end of the billing date. There are probably some human errors, and so that is not necessarily a scalable way of doing things. It's certainly a natural way of doing things just based on the way we manage our bills at home, but there are other ways to do this. Outsource, being able to hire somebody to come in to just take that off your plate. That's also one way to approach this. The challenge there is that if you want to do additional analysis, if you want to, as I said, identify buildings that are in need of retrofits, identify different strategies, no cost, low cost measures that you can implement at certain buildings. If you want to validate the savings from a project you've already invested in, you don't necessarily have the tools you need to go deep to do those things. Individual e-bills, we're seeing more and more that a variety of utilities are providing data online. You can download into a spreadsheet. We've found that in some cases that's on a per account basis. So if you're a building or a building owner with 4 or 5 buildings, you may have to acquire those different spreadsheets separately. The other challenge with this approach and with paper bills, accounts don't necessarily translate into buildings. I know a variety of building owners and operators who have 1 account for 5 buildings or 5 accounts for 1 building or a different type of system where the way they're being billed by their utility doesn't really give you the full picture. You can add it all up, you can aggregate it, but you have to do that on your own. So any type of software product that can do that for you, like what we provide, gets you quicker, as Alistair had said, and it gets you quicker to analyzing and using the data rather than managing it, checking it, making sure that it's accurate. So finally, bottom right corner, where we're moving and where we're pushing a lot of our clients is more of an automated or automatic acquisition point of view, where the data is flowing in, we have the data, you don't spend time making sure you have the data, you don't spend time checking the data, you really spend your time using that data for value add features and being able to improve outcomes and deliver outcomes, as I mentioned on that last slide. So on the next slide, if we move to that, I can go a little bit deeper and I can actually give you a couple examples specifically of what we're talking about. So from an energy management point of view, one of the places that this often starts is from a benchmarking point of view. I have many buildings, and I simply don't know which buildings are using a lot of energy, which ones are using a little bit of energy. I don't know if a lot of energy is good or bad. That's because the buildings may be large, they may be small, but it can be a very challenging problem. And the core of this is having utility bill data, but then you can very quickly identify your poor performers and you can focus your retrofit dollars. So to that first bullet or that first sub-bullet, if we look at this image below, this is from our software, and we're simply able to see that the green being the natural gas coming in as a utility bill, or maybe a couple utility bills, every year in the winter you see increased consumption every, each season. And that right there could raise a red flag. We also see an increased cost. So just looking at each individual month bill or looking at them over the course of a couple years, you may not notice that creep or that gradual move to higher consumption. In addition, we could take this data and we can weather normalize it. Maybe that tells a deeper story. Things that you don't have just from the utility bill, but that using the utility bill you can get deeper, make more decisions. But again, having this type of information will allow you to focus your time on what do I want to do to improve this building, how do I improve this building, actually make those improvements, and then you can move forward and validate that savings. Getting an Energy Star rating. We're seeing more and more, there's maybe 12 to 15 municipalities, large municipalities, that require an Energy Star rating. Energy Star, the core variable of Energy Star scores is utility bill data or consumption of energy, which is typically acquired through a utility bill. So we can use that data and we can automatically get an Energy Star score. It's seamless, there's no human effort required, and that score can be used either to submit to one of these municipalities if you have operations in those cities, or you can simply use that as a way to track and benchmark your buildings not only against yourself, but to other like buildings. The core of the Energy Star methodology is that for office buildings, you're compared against all other office buildings. For data centers, you're compared so on and so forth. As Alistair said, you can identify billing anomalies and consistencies. When you see it visually, when you see it in a graphical format, it stands out much more than if you're just reviewing bill after bill after bill. We also provide you, from an auditing point of view, with the actual utility bill image if you need to go back and check that. But as a facility manager, building manager, sustainability manager with many buildings, many utility bills, being able to do a quick glance at the whole picture and then drill into where you see trouble spots is far more efficient than starting from bottom up and looking at every individual utility bill. Moreover, budgeting, we hear this all the time, that being able to have a more certain picture of what I will spend on energy moving forward helps me do my job. It's extremely important to be able to have that, and by having accurate data, by getting it quickly, we're able to provide that using our software. Moreover, as I've touched on a couple other times, measurement and verification. In many cases, it's an understated goal, but a lot of energy efficiency projects are very costly, and the more you spend on them, the more eyes will be on that project to understand, are we saving money, are we not saving money, how much money are we saving, and that really can set the tone for future investments. In many cases, there's some risk, or I hear the risk of asking for a lot of money to make changes to a building that maybe it's known that it's an inefficient building, and the risk is simply that maybe we won't be able to tell or define or validate the savings that we achieved in the future. So by acquiring the utility bill data, by not worrying about all the time it might take to acquire that data, by moving really towards analyzing the outputs from a measurement and verification analysis, you're able to spend your time and reduce a lot of that risk. If we move to the next slide, really the focus here is on the communication, on engaging different stakeholders. what I'm showing below, we talk a lot about providing visibility to the executive level, showing them that energy is not simply an expense that is managed, and showing that it's actually, a competitive advantage. You can take the utility bill data, you can automatically collect it, and then what I'm showing here in this image is simply an executive level dashboard from a product we use, simply to show at a global level or at a North America level, where are my top consuming sites? And we can look at this on an absolute basis. We can look at this on a normalized basis, a variety of ways to normalize this data, production, square foot, number of employees, weather would be another common way to normalize data. But it can tell a story that can appeal and can resonate with individuals who may not really be focused on energy. There's a variety of other ways that you can look at your data to engage different stakeholders. Really, the goal here is by providing that visibility, by having a reliable source of the data and a reliable way to view it and analyze it, you're then able to do things like develop a carbon emissions inventory. We actually can use utility bill data to automatically create a carbon emissions inventory so that reporting to Carbon Disclosure Project, Dow Jones Sustainability Index, a variety of other standards out there, Energy Star could fit into this bucket as well. But by having this data at hand and having it quickly and accurate and reliably, you're able to report to these organizations. You're able to show that you have a commitment, you've made a commitment, and that commitment could be reducing costs. That commitment could be reducing environmental footprint. It could be all of the above, really. But it starts with having the data and having a way to actually translate the data into actionable intelligence or actionable information or visual information. And then, the last one here, once you have all this information, being able to set targets, set goals for the future. To Alistair's point, there's a lot of things that could be done with this data that building owners, that facility managers, energy managers identify as important features or important tasks. They simply just don't have time, and that's understandable given all the complexity that goes with this. But by having the information, by having it at hand, having it visual, we see a lot of organizations that are able to set targets to reduce in the future, set targets based on the fact that they know certain buildings are inefficient, and they can look at the savings they've achieved, or just looking across the board and saying, we believe we can hit a percentage point reduction of X in the next 5 years or 8 years or 10 years. And really the utility bill data acts as the basis or the baseline of that information. So I think with that, it's time to turn it back over to Eric. I appreciate everyone joining and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you, Joe. Great presentation. So here are the big takeaways from Joe's presentation. First of all, utility data has both many users and many uses across various departments in an organization. Secondly, automating energy data acquisition saves time and allows the organization to focus on other, more important tasks. And finally, big energy data is fundamental to improving energy management, carbon reporting, and supporting other initiatives. Next, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Urjanet. Urjanet is the world's first provider of big energy data as a service. Our mission is to deliver the big energy data organizations rely on to make smarter, more profitable, and eco-friendly decisions. We're also proud to announce that Urjanet was awarded Top Product of the Year for 2014 from Environmental Leader. So who is Urjanet? Urjanet is a data-only company. We don't provide software applications or any kind of analytic capabilities. That's what makes us a natural complement to partners such as Johnson Controls. And we don't provide energy management services either. We focus on the difficult problem of providing our customers a reliable stream of energy data. Our award-winning platform connects to thousands of energy sources, including more than 800 utility providers across North America and in Europe. We feed this data in near real time directly into our customers' applications for accounting, energy management, sustainability, and business intelligence reporting. So how does it work? Well, you can see on the slide in front of you that off to the left are a variety of different energy sources that the Urjanet platform is connected to. So a primary source of Urjanet's energy data is the utility itself. We've connected to nearly 900 utilities across North America where we're gathering both utility bill data and smart meter data. We're also connected to thousands of weather stations to bring weather data into our platform and a variety of sources for carbon. All this data we collect and bring into our platform, and that's where the magic happens. The data runs through over 150 different computerized audits to ensure that the data is accurate and clean. And the data is also normalized, since the source data for all this comes from different providers who all represent energy data in different ways. And then finally, this data, along with bill images, is delivered directly to our customers in a format that integrates it directly into their applications, whether it's for bill pay, sustainability, energy management, or any other applications. In a nutshell, we fully automate the process of acquiring, normalizing, and delivering big energy data. So that's a bit about what we do. So if you have additional questions, now is the time to ask them using the toolbar in your GoToWebinar dashboard. Now let's get on to our Q&A. Joe, I received a question for you. Can you expand more on how accounting can use good energy data and how the AP team can get better at spotting bad data?
Yes, it's a great question. It's I would say that this may be one of the most common questions, simply because this is a core need. Typically, it leads to to bigger questions, bigger issues, bigger activities in the future. Really, when it comes to AP, having the data quickly is very important. So the quicker you can identify the error, the quicker you can follow up with the utility company, or if it's an error where there was an operational control strategy that wasn't being utilized, you can figure that out and actually go and remedy that. For example, in some cases we've found that certain rooms, certain lighting just gets turned on at random hours of the night, and in some cases you can identify some of this just by looking at your utility bill. So from an AP point of view, the core needs that they have and the way that they can minimize account billing inconsistencies or errors, one would be analyze that data quickly, analyze that data via some visual tool rather than simply analyzing the bill. We also can create alerts and other types of flags that will say there's an inconsistency from month to month, or from this month to the last year, same month. So there's a variety of things. Once the data has been automatically collected, you can automate some checks. You can do visual scans more easily, and you also can do this more quickly, both because you have the data quicker and because it takes a lot less time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. The next question wasn't directed at any panelists in particular, but Alistair, you may be the best to answer this. The question is about someone who's still manually collecting energy data and wanting to know what would be the first step in improving this process.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's something we help a number of firms do, and generally it's a bit of a unpopular answer to begin with. We've talked about many times on this webinar that time constraints within an organization, but really the first thing that you have to do is take 2 steps back and view your organization and the problem with a fresh set of eyes, not this is what we've always done or this is what we should do. Really be able to trace every data source back to where it comes from and the process it goes through until it gets into the stage. So track it through every spreadsheet, through every pair of hands, and look for time sinks or areas where there's an opportunity for error, because that will really give you a sense of the scale of the problem or the potential problem. And then the next step is really gaining a better understanding of what could the future look like. And hopefully Joe's presentation will have shown you a little bit more in terms of what could potentially happen once you have that information at its end point. And that's definitely an area where we, again, speak to a lot of firms in terms of helping them go into the organization, figure out who exactly wants this data, what would they like to use it for, how should it need to be normalized, and where would they expect to find that information. And then once you're at that stage, you're then really at a position where you can start thinking holistically about this problem and engaging with firms such as Urjanet or Johnson Controls in terms of looking for a solution to this process and getting that data automated to shorten the time but also improve the quality of the data.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. The next question was directed at Urjanet. How are you working with software and service providers? And I would just say that, of course, as I described earlier, it's a natural for us to partner with these types of organizations. Software companies, of course, to provide real value to their customers, need good data to do the types of analytics that their software applications were built to do. So they're often reselling and embedding our data in their software applications. And something very similar is true for service providers. So to provide the types of energy management services that many organizations are in business to do, they also require good data. So our data gets embedded in the platforms that they use to enable their service offerings. So hopefully that addresses that question. There's another one here that also wasn't directed at any panelists in particular. Joe, maybe you could start, and then Alistair, you could chime in as well. But the question is, can you provide us with additional examples of best practices your clients took to automate their energy data acquisition? Joe, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. From a best practices point of view, it really starts with kind of doing an assessment of how much energy data are you collecting currently, what is your demand for energy data in the future. We've found in many cases that it's entered, it's managed, it happens late. We work with universities, for example, that are now able to get that data very quickly, and the staff that they have had to take the bill, enter it into a spreadsheet, and then to pretty much spend all their time doing that, now could actually look at the data, identify issues, identify problems, and also some of the error checks and errors that they had found in the past either weren't there anymore because there was no data entry, or they were able to find them, identify them, and act on them much quicker. So we certainly have that as a best practice. We also, a lot of the services that we provide the building owners, as you can imagine, one of the premises is we will improve this equipment, we will improve the operations of this building with either retrofitted equipment, a retrofit of the building, new equipment, but being able to more quickly make that assessment to say these are the buildings we think you want to focus on, and then being able to more quickly and more accurately show the savings so that we can actually put a value on how much energy are we saving you. Being able to do those things much more quickly and accurately certainly helps us deliver products and services to a lot of our customers who look at us and trust us to help them do that.
Okay, Alistair, do you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of what we do with firms, it goes back to my previous point in terms of originally trying to establish all different data sources which are involved with their energy or whether it's their carbon reporting, what impacts it could have. And then the second bit is jumping to the other end and figuring out what are people currently doing with data, because that's the best way to quickly realize, well, how much of this information is here. We commonly come across with firms of a wealth of data already existing within the organization. However, through the misorganized manner of it and the fact that it all doesn't reside in one place, you get multiple versions of the same data set, or you get people missing out on a data set that they could potentially provide, be useful for them. And an important point, sort of going on what Joe was mentioning, is in terms of getting to the facilities team and figuring out what information they have available in terms of a consumption standpoint, because once you start marrying that consumption data with data coming from your utility, you open up a whole new host of options. And again, what we look to help firms do is better understand the likely places where that information may reside, but then also opportunities for getting that information out for the lowest possible amount of time. So trying to avoid any excess expenditure on new pieces of kit, when in fact the BMS system that you already have in place has so much information in there. You just need to work with a software, a services, or a system integrator to figure out how to get that data out so that you can start making that data, which essentially you've already invested in, start working for you again.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. Joe, here's a question directed at you. What's the benefit to having your buildings ENERGY STAR certified?
So there's a variety of different benefits. For one, it's a requirement for LEED certification. So if you are interested in LEED certification, you're required to have an ENERGY STAR score. In a variety of large municipalities, I'll probably miss some of them, but New York, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Chicago just passed the ordinance that goes into effect, I think, later in the summer. Austin, Texas, I think Portland, Oregon, and Seattle both. Philadelphia, Boston, I believe, a variety of different cities are now saying that you as a building owner must benchmark your building, and the typical way of doing that, or the standard, has become ENERGY STAR. So there is some local regulation behind it. I would say that the real benefit, there's a couple. One, it gives you a good metric to assess your buildings internally, and it's based on EUI, so energy use index, or energy consumed per square foot, and it allows you to have a number to identify performance of your building, and then you can track that over time, because as your energy consumption changes, your score will change. Moreover, we work with a variety of different building owners and operators who actually can use the ENERGY STAR platform to share data among other like buildings. So even sports facilities, they can benchmark buildings against each other and have some friendly competition to actually say, not only do they compete for real, but they can even say, which buildings are more efficient, less efficient, and ENERGY STAR provides that platform to share data from a lot of different building owners and operators.
Okay, thank you, Joe. This next question was directed at Urjanet, and that is, the question is, are we able to download both cost data and usage data? The answer to that is yes, and it's worth a bit of an explanation. So as I described earlier, Urjanet has automated the process of aggregating and delivering this data to our customers, and so that has a couple benefits. One is, of course, the data is delivered much, much faster. You don't have to wait for a process of the bills going through the mail to be received by the customer. The other is, because we've replaced manual data entry, it means the data we're providing is much more accurate. And finally, because we're doing this through software, we're able to capture all the data elements on the bill. So some utility bills have as many as 125 different data elements. That would include, of course, cost and usage data, but all that information is provided in the Urjanet data feed, along with a copy of the bill image itself. And then there was another question about how Urjanet actually collects the bill data, and this is through an electronic interface that Urjanet has written, where we're extracting data directly from utility billing systems. So it's an electronic exchange of information. I hope that addresses that question. And then, Alistair, we have one for you. It says here that you mentioned in your presentation that data entry clerks often lack the expertise to properly key in a utility bill. Can you explain more about this and why that's the case?
Yes, definitely. And in terms of one thing there, it's almost even the domain expertise isn't even required, because the information which they've been asked to input is a level below where a high level of domain expertise can bring added value. But even we can think, for example, again, Joe showed a timeline going across 2 years. It's pretty impressive if I was a data entry clerk to enter data in April 2014 and remember what data point I entered in. I mean, it would even be pretty good if I could remember in May 2014, never mind April 2012, for example. What would be even more impressive if I could then calculate that, hang on a minute, that's 20% higher than it was 2 years ago. It'd even be more impressive if I could realize that, well, my demand hasn't changed, and my demand, like my charge per unit kilowatt hour, they haven't said that's changed in anything. Oh, but actually, hang on a minute. I've been putting an incorrect ratchet charge, for example, and that's a terminology where it basically charges you for your peak usage at a given point in time for a billing period, and that's sort of a nice boundary utilities use that at any point your highest peak is recorded, and it doesn't matter if you only hit that once or if you hit it 5 times. As soon as you hit it, that becomes the value which you then get charged. And noticing subtle differences on a bill, or being able to do the data audits on data to automatically capture those points in time, that's where you start seeing domain expertise come into place, is in terms of you even look to take domain expertise away from a human, or you invest in a small number of humans, which is why you would look for a software or a services partner where all of this becomes automated, and really you take away the lengthy process in getting the data into a system, and you pay a premium or a service charge for someone to do a number of intelligent audits and flag these issues to you, and then you spend your own time running valuable value-add analysis for your organization.
Okay, good. That's great, Alistair. Joe, next question for you. Obviously, Urjanet and Johnson Controls have a relationship. Why did you select Urjanet?
Good question. Our goal in all of this is to deliver those outcomes that I spoke to: more efficient buildings, better run buildings that cost less. So we were really looking for a core data provider that could focus on data quality, data acquisition, and really allow us to focus on our core set of skills around software to manage these services to deliver these outcomes. And we found that we worked very well with Urjanet, and we were able to quickly utilize their data, plug it into our software products.
Okay, that's great. Alistair, one that was directed to you from your presentation. You referenced bad data drives bad capital investment decisions. Can you provide an example of that?
Yes. So this is a example. This is an example where you could imagine that if you've done a quick analysis on the data that you've received, and it identifies that 3 or 4 of the sites are potentially troublesome sites, and you go out and you conduct audits on those sites, so whether that's you get someone in external or you do it internally, this entire process has a cost value put on it. And if it then actually comes to the top of the issue, is the fact that 2 of those sites shouldn't actually have been in there, not only have you wasted money in terms of investigating those sites, but you've also potentially missed out 2 sites which should have been in that group of 5. So even from the first instance, you found yourself looking in the wrong place. And where this becomes important is, again, potentially going back to the budget issue I was speaking to. We're seeing an increasing nature of firms developing their own energy management budgets, where a project savings rolls back in to the pot, and that generates more savings. So for these firms which are looking at using budget procedures like that to ensure that energy management budgets continue to grow, it's very important to ensure that you go after your big projects first with your biggest return and your quickest return, as that replenishes your pot the quickest, which means you can then go into site 6, 7, 8 and work your way through your portfolio, improving it as you go along. So that would be an example where if you base decisions on bad data, you can, it goes back to the analogy of you essentially return to stabbing in the dark, and hopefully the opportunities pop out, but sometimes they won't actually materialize because they were never there in the first place.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Alistair. We've got a bunch of questions that have been submitted that we haven't got a chance to respond to, and we're coming up on the end of our hour. So I will tell you that if you've posted a question that we haven't been able to answer today, we will get back to you and email you a response. I want to go ahead and wrap things up by mentioning that we'll be sending you a download to a few resources that you see here before you, along with a copy of the slides and a recording of this webinar. We recently published a fantastic tutorial on the top 5 things you should know about big energy data, which addresses common issues and best practices when it comes to automating your energy data collection. We also have a report from Verdantix on how Urjanet can work to unravel the process of collecting data from your utility bill, which Alistair's team actually helped put together for us. So thanks again for joining us today. For more information on how Urjanet can automate your big energy data collection process, call us at 678-439-8752 or visit www.urjanet.com.